And speaking of depressing, right? I imagine because usually people here that I know of that are in real estate, usually they start with the real estate license, and then they see all of these investors making so much money, and they get depressed, and then they become investors, right? Or impressed, right? They get depressed, then impressed, then depressed. But it sounds like you did it the opposite way. You invested in real estate and then got your license. What made you do it in that order?
I was an analyst when I was a treasury analyst for 10 years, 9.5 years an analyst before. And I was buying investment properties because tax shelters certain ways, like you're able to build wealth through that. So, and not to mention at the end of tax time, because you're able to, with the write-offs, that's one of the things about owning properties here is that you're able to write off a certain amount of money and get, cash back from the government after they take away from your check. So that's how we kind of got started. And then I was buying and selling properties. And to be honest with you, I was not happy with all the realtors I was dealing with. Actually, a lot of them were like, if I can say subpar, I'm giving them a compliment, right? So I didn't want to really be associated with this type of people. Like they left such a bad taste in my mouth. It was not a good experience purchasing them or selling them. It was just, it was like, no, I don't want to be associated with this. But what happened was in 2014, we had a renter that was one of our properties down the street here, and we ended up having a crack foundation. So she was actually an executive at Target. So she had to move out, and thank God her lease was up. And that's right before Target left Canada, because if she would stay longer, we would have been vacant anyway. So we had to fix up the property, and we're like, so my wife and I were talking about it, like, listen, like we can sell this one, maybe move it to another investment property. And we fixed up the property, and my brother-in-law was a great agent, so he's not in that category, but he basically leaned on us. We're like, hey, listen, we're taking over the property. We're fixing up. My wife staged it. We did all the work we needed to do. I told him about the pictures and the stuff we wanted to do, where to price it. And we ended up he just listened to what we said. And he's like, okay, yeah, let's just do that. And my strategy worked. And I was like, that's interesting that he used my strategy to make money. And it was like, okay, so maybe it's not that far. Again, by this point, I've been doing this for 10 years. So I kind of knew you see things and you're looking at what's the trends of what's happening. But because of the bad taste in my mouth, I didn't want to be a realtor. Well, fast forward from that, I went through 7 bosses at work. There was a whole lot of restructuring happening. And I had this one boss for a year and a half. And I knew the writing was on the wall that one by one, we were all getting packaged out. So finally came to my turn and I got packaged. I literally went into the office. I said, oh, so you guys are finally letting me go. It was like, he was kind of shocked. He looked at me and goes, well, it's not because of your performance. I'm like, I know, I'm good at what I do. But it was like just having confidence. And I remember talking to the HR girl when I was cleaning up and it's a humbling experience getting,
of course,
getting the thing slip. And she was looking at me and she's like, are you okay? And I said, why? She's like, you're taking this really, really well. I'm like, well, I saw the writing on the wall. I just kind of figured out I was mentally prepared for it. I didn't love what I was doing. I wasn't excelling to the where, like when you play at a high level of any kind of sporting event, like sports, doesn't matter what you're playing, you're used to being up here. And you're just, when you take over, like, if I go to a sporting event, like you're the one everybody's talking about, you're this. And so I felt in my job, I was just kind of like a plugger, like, I don't know, whatever, if you're playing football, you're just kind of like guys sitting on the sideline, you kind of play all the plays, but like, you're not a superstar. And it was like, that's not my experience, what I was happy with. Right. So when I got packaged out, I was like, okay, well, what can I do that I can be the star, in kind of sense, like, what can I do? This is where the entrepreneurial side came in. I was like, well, I've been helping people get into investment properties for 10 years at this point, using my blueprint. Why don't I come up with a business in which I can help I can identify properties that are great for investors that they can potentially invest. If the property is not up to par, if it's not already in, like, say you buy a bungalow and it's not already into 2 or 3 units, I can, use my network and we can help fix it up. And then, so if you use my guys, so I can help identify the property, we can fix the property to make it as an investment property, not just a regular residential. And then at the end of it, if you want, the third package I had was the property management. Why don't I run the property for you for 6 months for free if you do the other 2 packages? And then in that time, right, like you can see what it's like, especially for new landlords who don't know how to do this. It'll get your feet running. We'll walk you through it. If you want to continue that, then we'll give you a payment plan for the property management. So that was the idea. And then my dad had all these properties, and I was like, so I was identifying his properties, which I was going to revamp. And at the time, I lent him some money, and I said, listen, instead of paying me back, why don't we do this? Why don't I fix up the properties where I'm identifying the issues with, and I'll use it as my portfolio. And then you pay me back whatever it is, and I'll show it to the bank in case I have to go for money. I was like, listen, I already have some steady income. I have a client. So I already had it all set up. So, and then between my financial planner and I, we were talking about it. He liked the idea. We're bouncing ideas.